Hey everyone, in today's video we're going to talk about how to stand when you're shooting your bow. Now there's a few things we want to go through before we get into the specifics of the different types of stances. The first thing we want to talk about is we want our feet to be about shoulder width apart or slightly wider. That'll give us a nice wide base, nice and stable, because the main thing with a stance is that it keeps us stable no matter the condition. So shoulder width apart, slightly wider, and our stance doesn't only mean where our feet are, it also applies to our shoulders and our hips. Our shoulders and our hips. And what that means is you don't want your hips, out, because now I'm off balance with my butt sticking out. You want to roll your hips forward so that your hips are in line with your legs and then over your feet. So all of your center of gravity is right over the feet, and you want that balance point to be slightly forward toward the balls of your feet, not completely on the balls of your feet like if you were boxing or something like that, but just slightly forward on the balls of your feet so you are more stable that way. And then same thing with your shoulders. You don't want to be leaned over this way, leaned back that way, this way or that way. We want really good posture. And if you're looking at someone who's shooting down range, if you have a curve in your back where it looks like there's a C shape that your spine is making, that's called a hollow back. We have a great article on Archery 360. I'll leave a link to it in the description where you can read more about that if that's something that you're encountering. So we want shoulders in line with our hips in line with our feet. Everything's in a good straight line, and our center of gravity is over our feet. That's going to give us a good basis as we start maneuvering with our feet to find our stance. Now there's two main styles of stance, an open stance and a closed stance. The closed stance is pretty simple. So if the camera is my target and my shooting line is here, I'll stand here with my toes even, my shoulders already pointed to the target, and that's a closed stance. Toes even, shoulder pointed to the target, ready to go. One advantage of that is that your shoulders are already pointed to the target, which is the ultimate goal. Is like as we get to full draw, we want our shoulders pointed to the target because that'll help us use our skeletal structure to support the weight of the bow, and it's a big part of something called alignment, which you can read more about. Okay, we're back. I repositioned the camera that way you could see my whole body because it's really important for the open stance. Alright, so here I'm standing with an open stance. Again, you guys are my target, so I'm open to the target here. The key with an open stance is as you're drawing the bow, you want your hips to stay in line with your feet. So if your hips turn like this and are in line with your shoulders, and your leg is all twisted like this, that makes an open stance really unstable and really uncomfortable. So if you're having trouble keeping your hips in line with your feet, so you would look like this, twisting at your core, what you would do is put pressure down with your lead foot, press down to the ground, and that'll help keep your hip in place, aligned with your feet. And so as you're coming up and you're getting into your alignment, your shoulders are pointed to the target, your hips are still open, and that creates a really stable foundation for your shot. Okay, so now that you've seen an open stance and you understand that you need to keep your hips in line with your feet and not in line with your shoulders, the advantage of an open stance is that it is more stable or some people find it to be more stable, especially in winds, because you're pushing down with that front foot, you're coiling around your core. And some people also find it a little bit easier to load into their back with an open stance as well. And of course, if you're not really happy with both a closed stance or an open stance, a happy medium in between the two is perfect. So if I'm at a closed stance here, just slightly open, that's a good happy medium. That's another thing to try out. So how you would go about choosing between an open stance, a closed stance, or somewhere in between is shoot all three see what feels the most stable to you, and work with your archery coach in developing your shot, because the style of form you're using will also dictate the style of stance you're using. For example, if you're shooting NTS, you're going to shoot an open stance, and it just depends on how open. But again, that's something you're going to work on with your coach, because the reason why you would shoot an open stance with NTS is because coiling is such an important part of that, and to do that, you need to have an open stance. But if you're not shooting that, you can shoot close stance, open stance, something in between. I like something in between. I like that happy medium, but it's a personal preference thing. Find what works best for you. There's great archers who shoot all different types of stances. The important thing is they do it the same way each time. So now if you're watching World Archery, I think that's a really great way to watch a lot of different styles of shooting. You'll notice that as archers approach the line, they look down and they do a little dance to set their feet the same way each time, and that's an important step that you need to work into your shot process as well. As you approach the line, just take that 1 second to look down, set your feet so it's in your stance, and start shooting. I'm Scott with Archery 360. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you all in the next one.